Well, top of the morning to you. This is our Tuesday key market drivers call for July 2nd. Getting ready for a holiday weekend. You see on the screen right now, or you should be. I think I'm sharing it. Our contact info. We would love to hear from you. So let's get after it. First off, we hope that everybody has a happy and safe Independence Day. I was reading on one of my wires yesterday morning that they have a name for this holiday that is not good because this is the one that more people get hurt and worse. So certainly be careful out there. I had a kid drown in the Platte River, I heard. So yeah, you gotta be careful. Outdoors, fireworks, all that
Don't
stuff
lose
is
any
wonderful.
fingers.
But
Yep.
yeah, don't lose any don't lose any fingers. So as far as markets go, we've gotten some action here. We've rain makes grain. I think that's what the corn market certainly seems to be trading. Corn prices lost 7.5% last week. A little bit more yesterday. I think they were down. I think I saw Karen Braun tweet that they're down 10% in like what 7 or 8 trading sessions. And you made the comment in the office a couple of weeks ago, Scott, that you said, "Are we getting ready to drive off a cliff?" And that was, in retrospect, quite prophetic. And I think your rationale was the weather's good, conditions are good, and this is the time of the year. If you look at the seasonals on corn, this is where if you got a decent crop, this is the time when markets kind of late June.
We have seen this movie before.
We have seen this movie before, no doubt about it. I got grain makes grain, or we certainly still have some spots. One of those is pretty close to our Twin Cities office, where you guys just have got too much rain. And we'll show you some of the pictures. I think we're going to trying to coax Nate into getting us a cornfield picture with him in a floaty, but I'm not sure that that's going to work or not. But we got way too much rain in some areas. But generally speaking, a lot of the U.S. is really, really looking good at this point. Crop conditions down again. Again, we talk about the subjective nature of that. It's down a couple ticks on corn. Beans kind of held serve last week, but I think the overriding message is it's still miles better than it was a year ago. And we're coming into that very important time of pollination. I'm going to show you some pictures here in a bit. We have a cornfield right down the street that's, I got several of them around here, starting to pop tassels and got little ears coming out with silks on them. So had a very important report last Friday. I got neutral to bearish, probably neutral to maybe a little bit friendly beans and wheat, but pretty bearish report on corn, and that kind of drug everything over the edge of the cliff. Of that 7.5% that we lost in corn prices last week, 33 cents, I think it was what it was on the July. I think a little over a third of that was Friday after the report came out. So
corn is king.
Corn is king, and we will show you the report. And then the last bullet, sell Mortimer sell. We looked at the CFTC commitment of traders report last Friday, and when you get across the grain section, which is the top of the slide we'll show you here, the spec was selling everything. Big sales week on corn, big sales week on beans, big sales week on a whole bunch of different stuff. And the spec is starting once again to amass some pretty hefty short positions in a lot of these commodities. So we will show you that as well, but let's get after it here. Corn conditions, again, down 2%, but still 67% good to excellent. Nationally, at this time last year, we were 51% good to excellent, and only 50% on beans. So, again, it depends on how you look at it. This downward trend is what some people want to talk about, but those people that would be bullish are not getting a whole lot of traction right now. So I think the bigger question is, especially for something like corn, the soy complex didn't go down near as much last week. But when you have that big a drop in corn, you've always got to ask yourself the question, especially on the 2nd of July, have we gone too far down too fast? Are we getting to a spot where maybe we're a little bit overcooked on the downside because the spec is piling on? Only time will tell for sure, but some of these values don't look too bad to us for right now. So here's the report. Stocks report on top. You can see we have more corn than last year, a lot more corn than last year. and about 120 million bushels more than we thought we should have left in the checkbook at this point. So was the corn crop last year even bigger than the USDA told us? Are we not feeding as much? It's always difficult to tell with corn, but we got plenty of corn sitting around. A little bit higher beans and a little bit higher wheat. I would argue that the bean and wheat number, not extremely material.
No.
Not extremely material on the stocks numbers. But I think the combination of 120 million bushels more corn in the checkbook on June 1st we found ourselves some of those acres back. Now, a little bit lower bean acres, a little bit lower wheat acres, more corn acres, which if you recall last year it's the same trend. It's like the USDA has gotten to a spot where they're kind of consistently underestimating corn area for some damn reason. But another almost another 1.5 million acres of corn ground from the March report, 1.4 something million additional acres. And I think the combination of the extra stocks and the extra acres and the really good conditions at this time of the year and the really good forecast that Paige is going to talk about is kind of all arrows point down for corn. And that seems to be the direction that it is adhered to. And obviously, as I'll show you in a bit here, the spec has taken notice and be piling on is what they typically do. You guys can check this slide out if you want. When he sends the slides, I don't want to spend a whole lot more time on it. But your 4th of July cookout's going to cost a bit more. Although I did notice when I was looking at the makeup on the right there, it's a pretty protein heavy menu.
Nothing wrong with that. This is America.
Hamburgers and chicken breasts and pork chops.
Where's the carbs at? Where's the 12-pack of beer?
Exactly.
That's got to be higher though too.
It's a paleo diet with some ice cream and lemonade thrown in. But at any rate, prices are going to be up this year. So this is the Syngenta field right down the road. But I would tell you, this is not as I think I made the comment last week with how tall this corn was that it was probably the 75th or 80th percentile around here. I think other stuff is catching up. I would say that this field is certainly not unrepresentative. I mean, we got a lot of stuff that looks like this. I've seen tassels getting thrown quite a few places while we were driving around this weekend. So,
and we never know because it's a Syngenta field. It's a seed corn.
Yeah,
it's not a breeding field because they'll have the two. So that's not what's going on in that field this year. It's probably an aggregator field. Yeah. And maybe this isn't just a very tall variety. But looks pretty good.
You would expect the plants to be taller still before they started popping tassels. Yeah, I would agree. But that field's probably close to 7 foot tall.
Yeah, getting there.
So we got, I saw the irrigation running last week, although I suspect they were probably putting some chemical on the field. It could not possibly be because they need moisture. Yeah. So here's where the little pollens come from. Here is the silks. For those of you that aren't familiar with this, every one of those silks, every single kernel location on the little ear here has got one of these little tiny, basically there's like a straw. They're a hollow tube.
Yeah.
And that pollen will get in that tube and it will travel down and it will basically every tube is attached to one place, one location on that corn where a kernel will form. So how good pollination will be the largest determining factor of how good and how big that ear is and how many kernels it has on it. The second most important part of that is going to be after we pollinate, you got to fill those things out. And sometimes when you have a real dry finish, like we had last year and the year before and the year before that here in the West, you won't get the top of that ear won't fill out because it doesn't have enough moisture. I don't know that that's going to be possible this year. I don't want to say we have enough moisture to get this crop to the finish line, but holy crap, we don't know that we need a whole lot more. Here's some of our knee-high by the 4th of July slides. Certainly in Minnesota, where Nate is, that crop is struggling with way too much moisture. Paige, third one over from the left side. That's a field, I think, out by Utan where she lives. And Scott and I are here in front of this Syngenta field down the road. You're what, 6'5"?
Yeah,
So that's got to be 7 foot tall corn.
pretty close.
So anyway,
Dave gets lost.
yeah, I went out in it. Melissa said she was going to walk out in it and just put her hand up. So let's get into it. There's the beating that corn took on the top. Lost 33 cents on the SEP futures, 7.5%. Pretty similar across the board there. We keep reading stuff intermittently about the Chinese corn crop is struggling. Obviously, the market here doesn't care. And again, I think when you triangulate all this data that we're giving you, rain makes grain, we're getting plenty of rain, the spec is piling on. But when I see the spec start to pile on that much in a single week and amass the positions we're going to show you that they have, and I keep reading this China headline, when I see the spec that seems to get way on one side of the boat or way on the other side of the boat, that's really kind of my signal to look for something that would put the market the other direction and cause a stampede. And I don't know if the market doesn't seem ready to really trade that yet, but well, if we have a problem in China, could that be the spark that sends the spec running yet again?
I doubt it. That I would doubt
this looks too good here.
The thing that we have to remember, if you believe the Chinese numbers, and I mean, you don't have any other way to prove it. They have, and we're getting ready to have a pretty big ending stocks. Their ending stocks, again, if you believe them, would be 4 times what our ending stocks are going to be.
Yeah, they carry big stockpiles and big cushions. So.
Over 210 million tons of ending stocks.
If you believe them.
If you believe them.
Yeah. No, I
don't think the market's going to care about it until we start seeing big export sales out of the US, right? I mean, that's going to be the trigger, I think, for the spec to say, okay, the Chinese are in buying. Because to Scott's point, how do you ever know what they're telling us if it's accurate?
Well, that's an excellent point. I mean, you both make an excellent point. I think, but again, I do look at the spec positions, and I guess I'm starting to get that feel in my gut that maybe we're a little bit too cheap, a little bit too quick. We've certainly been talking about historically with the ending stocks to use that we've got. You typically would see a corn price that started with a 3. Yeah, not a 4
before now.
And so we've still got downside. I just wonder if we're not getting there a little bit quick. We do still have weather in front of us. Rare is the crop that you get through without some sort of weather scare at some point. So certainly possible the way it's been raining that it keeps raining. But I'm just starting to kind of have that little bit more of a gut feel, I guess. I guess we'll see. You can see conditions there. You can see that we're moving through harvest down in South America at a pretty good clip. And so all seems well, pretty much in the corn market everywhere except possibly China. When you get to the wheat side of things, I'm kind of glad the wheat market is not in the driver's seat again, because that was a bit of a harrowing ride. What's going on in the wheat market, Scotty?
Well, they took a little bit of a week off. You could barely say we were down last week.
I wonder, should be tired by now.
2 cents, 1 cent, 4 cents. It really didn't do much. This past week, Russia has been the driving force, the low guy in the world market, and they still are. Our conditions here in the United States are really pretty good. And oh, by the way, this will be our last week of winter wheat conditions, because we're over halfway harvested now. We're 54% harvested versus 40 on average. And spring wheat looks pretty good. We went up 1 in spring wheat to 72%, good to excellent. Still very, very good up there.
Pretty fancy looking crop.
Yeah, better than it was a year ago. So our winter wheat. On the soft red side of things, the Illinois crop is nearly complete. I mean, they're 89%. We're hearing very good things there. Above average yield, sound quality. A little bit of vomitoxin problems, but not terrible at this point. And the hard red winter, at least the big states, you've got Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas are all either done or near done. And I have read some stuff in Kansas as high as 70 bushels per acre, which would be huge for the hard red crop. 11.9, 12% type protein. That's not far from average. We'll see what the crop average ends up being. And then the last thing there is yesterday, ICAR moved their number up, and I don't know if Sovecon decided, well, maybe we ought to move ours up too. Just this morning put out a new note, and they went up 3.5 million tons up to 84. So what problem? We don't have a problem with Russia crop.
Not at least a bigger one as we thought, but
yeah, not nearly as big as we thought, but it's not going to be 75 either.
Yeah, that market was kind of handicapping, 15 plus million metric tons of losses. And now it's looking to be under 10. I mean, that 80
well under 10. Yeah. So we'll see. There's nothing to be terribly concerned about, I don't think, at this point. So I suppose on the bullish side of things, that last bullet there on the left is, we're back to being short, and how big and how long are we going to go? Now Dave's going to show you when we get there. Corn has really got a big position, and we're getting there on wheat, but it's not quite there yet. So yeah.
I'm going to hustle through the soy complex and the veg oil because that's not where the action is right now. Yes, the soybean market is declining as we got good conditions, but it's corn is in the spotlight, always is this time of the year. We're getting ready for pollination, and soybeans simply have a supporting role. You can see bean oil was not down much, and with the amount of spec selling that we saw last week, a little bit surprising that bean oil market is holding up as well as it is. And that's an energy thing, I think. You get energy prices kind of bounced pretty good yesterday, up a little bit again. And I think that's the primary thing. That's the primary thing driving the bus when it comes to bean oil. I think we're back to kind of following energy pretty close here. When you look at the veg oil markets here, they didn't do much either. I got an extra zero there. I just noticed on the fourth bullet. Argentine soybean oil FOB is in fact not $9,005. It's $905. That was, I think, down $5. Palm oil didn't do anything last week, so not really a whole lot to talk about here. The only thing I wanted to call out is this bottom line. We bounced $15 a ton in Malaysia yesterday, and the reason given, without any detail or explanation, is looming trade problems between Indonesia and China. Now, that doesn't affect palm oil in total, but remember, the market prices off the Malaysian market, even though Indonesia is bigger, because there just isn't a good market structure. There isn't a good reporting mechanism. So Malaysia is kind of where everybody's eyes go. Malaysia was up because, hey, we might get some business from the Chinese instead of Indonesia because of these trade issues. So is that going to distort the market between Malaysia and Indonesia more than normal? It certainly has here in the short run, and we will keep an eye on that. Outside of that, nothing really going on there. And Jay, why don't you tell us, I'll give you your dairy notes, buyer notes here, what's going on in the market? I know we got some reports last week.
Yeah, last week we got the cold storage report. I'll talk a little bit about that once we hit cheddar cheese and talk about butter. We've got some other reports coming up. The biggest one is probably more on the products report, which will come out tomorrow on July 3rd. So we'll look forward to that. On the milk side, seasonally, milk's getting tight, not a big surprise. We've got flooding in certain areas. We've got higher temperatures in other areas. So on a week-to-week basis, when you get stuff like that, it does impact milk flows. And so nothing out of the unusual, let's put it that way, more of a timing issue than anything else. Back on the reports, cheddar cheese, after the cold storage report came out, a little on the bearish side, or excuse me, bullish side on cheese. We normally build cheese stocks during this time of year. We actually pulled stocks away, which kind of a little bit of a head scratcher. So we're kind of figuring out through that. But it did take the trade by surprise, and the market did respond by going higher. Again, we normally, over the past 5 years, we usually build cheese stocks during this time of year, and we actually drew those down. On the butter side, cold storage report, butter stocks came out pretty decent. Probably did not meet expectations. It was a good build. It's kind of last month before we go into the rest of the summertime and start to draw down stocks. And the market responded by going down a little bit, then popped right back up. I think the biggest call out in the dairy complex, running some numbers, if you think about cheese and butter, these are very challenging, difficult markets on the risk management side. Cheese, we hit the low at $1.39. We're at $1.90 as of yesterday. That's 51-cent spread. Butter, 253 on January 8th, and yesterday we closed at 314, which is a 61-cent spread. So again, these are tough markets that have some big swings in them. I don't see that changing going forward. So you just got to be mindful when the market does give you an opportunity to take some ownership. It's best to put some stuff in your pocket.
Yeah, this is a market that when it gives you a buying opportunity, probably don't have time to actually schedule a meeting and talk about it.
Yeah,
you probably ought to have that done ahead of time. So,
yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Jay. Let me show you the spec positions here. Whoop, went past it. Look at that top line. The grains and oilseed markets. Spec was there was action at all the tables in the commodity casino and the grain room, and man, the spec was selling 86,000 contracts of corn. The spec sold last week, and that is, remember, only through close of trade Tuesday. So I would bet that number is going to get bigger. Big B number. Look at soybean oil. That is I'm not going to say that's the biggest week ever because I didn't have time to go back and look, but that's a big week. 23,500 contracts of change in the soybean oil thing. And the soybean oil market is huge.
Well, and look at the record short that we've ever had is 109,950. So, you know, 1,500 contracts or so.
Yeah, and the last time we set that record, we were close to 23 or 4% of open interest. It's only, I say only, 17.5% of open interest. That tells you that there's a lot of volume and a lot of action in that soybean oil market. What does this all mean? Well, again, if the spec gets to one side of the canoe or the other side of the canoe too far, the canoe tips over quite often. And the spec has got short bets. They are betting the market's going to go down. You get something that gets in the way of that and starts the market going back the other direction. This would be higher. You can get the spec piling on. I wonder if the spec, it looks like they're kind of piling on a little bit on the way down and exaggerating the move lower. I always look for that thing that might start the stampede and get things going the other way. Again, I don't want to get bullish with this look a good a looking crop, but you got to know that the spec has already got quite a bit of money bet on the short side. All right, Paige, weather's the most important thing this time of the year. We left you plenty of time to tell us what's going on, and Nate to complain about that 7-day forecast.
Yeah. As we've kind of talked about earlier on this call, it seems like the crop's getting a little bit variable in spots. Obviously all that flooding kind of washed out a lot of areas up there, but even outside of those flooding areas, you saw Nate's picture in comparison to the rest of our pictures with the corn crop getting a little bit waterlogged up there. Again, that's not the entire state of Minnesota, but you can definitely find some patches in there, as you probably could across a lot of other states as well. So seems like some stuff is under a little bit of water, kind of waterlogged. And then there's some other stuff that looks phenomenal. Like here in Nebraska, things are looking pretty dang good. We keep getting pretty good rains. Last night, I think we got 2.5 inches, and I think even south of here.
2.4 at the Regal Ranch. You had more than that, didn't you, Scotty?
2.9. Yep.
That's interesting, since you guys live like 5 blocks away from each other. Farther south, I think Nate saw that they got quite a bit more rain, more like 5 or 6 inches, if not more. So we saw a pretty good rain event come through here and probably hit a lot of the Midwest last night. Again, we're not struggling with water at this point. Remember, kind of right where we are in eastern Nebraska and western Iowa, we were kind of the last of the states that got out of those drought conditions. So we have a little bit bigger of a runway. A lot of these other states have gotten a lot of rain throughout this entire growing season and look to continue to get some good rains. Again, that will be helpful to some of the crops that are not waterlogged, and then not helpful at all for those other crops that are waterlogged. The Eastern Corn Belt has actually kind of slipped back into showing up on that drought monitor.
This is new,
Nothing,
isn't it?
yep, nothing to be overly worried about. I think last week was 2 or 3% of the corn area in drought. Again, that's a very low number. I don't know what it was last year, but I can tell you it was a lot higher than 6%. But it looks like some of these rains might hit some of that eastern corn belt that's been a little bit dry. The worrisome part is really kind of if you overlaid where all of that flooding has been and a lot of those heavier rains outside of those flooded areas, it looks like they're going to get kind of some more rains in the next week, which will not be helpful.
Isn't this like 4 weeks in a row that Minnesota has been red and purple?
Seems like it. I'm sure Nate would agree.
Yeah, it's wet.
And if he keeps talking, he'll open the can of worms of how annoyed he is by it.
Yeah.
So looking at these longer term forecasts, that 6 to 10 day temperature outlook and even the 8 to 14 day has been a lot. It's kind of been in those darker reds where we've seen well above average temperatures. And that seems to be breaking here a little bit, which is dang near ideal for corn pollination. I know Dave pointed out that we are already seeing some fields tasseling, which means pollination is going to be right around the corner for a lot of those crops. Obviously, Nate's crops are not going to be pollinating anytime soon. But kind of a cooler, wetter forecast is pretty good for pollination, and that's kind of what we got on deck. I know that 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day, majority of kind of the northern plains and the Midwest look at more near normal precipitation outlook, but you look at that 7-day forecast, and I think we're still going to kind of get some pretty good rains.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. And there's our contact info again. We would love to hear from you. And as always, and especially now in these crazy commodity times, be careful out there.
All right.